Hi, so welcome back after that short break. And having looked at the whole concept of space communication, we're now going to meet somebody who probably ultimately will be very interested in the concept of how to communicate from space to Earth, and will be relying on that. We're going to meet an analog astronaut. Her name is Eleni Charitonos, and she's originally from Cyprus. And let's get on. Let's meet Eleni, actually, if we can. So Eleni, hi, good morning to you.
Hello, good
Hi.
morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And actually, Eleni, can I just ask you, are you actually in Cyprus at the moment, or are you somewhere else? Because you got your kind of...
I'm in Cyprus. I was in Hawaii for my second mission. Then I went to Scotland, and now I'm back to Cyprus.
Right, okay, so there's a lot of travel, because our concept of the analog astronaut is that, I mean, perhaps you can explain it to us, what an analog astronaut really means, because I think it's almost like simulating the life of an astronaut. Is that right?
Exactly. So analog missions are missions on Earth that simulate how life would be like on other planetary objects, because we want to do so many projects and so many research projects in space, but we don't have the funding or the equipment. We need to do these missions here to test some hardware or do different kind of aspects of the living conditions on other planetary objects by simulating the space environment here.
Okay, and you just mentioned you've been to Hawaii, which doesn't sound like a terribly hard environment to be in. Scotland may be tougher. There are some other questions I want to ask, but I mean, you mentioned it. Why Hawaii, why Scotland, or was it just a holiday?
So Scotland, it's because I study there. I'm doing my mathematics and statistics degree there. And Hawaii, it's because the volcano there, the Mauna Loa volcano, is a really good place to simulate the Martian conditions. So like the terrain of the volcano, the altitude, the high altitude, and the restrictions you have due to the high altitude. These are really, really good aspects of the life on Mars.
Okay. So if we just stay with this, you know, your experience in Hawaii, I mean, what kind of, you know, just take us through. Do you go and live on the volcano for 4 or 5 days? Are you moving around in a spacesuit? Just give us a picture of the sort of you know, a day in the life on this volcano, what you're doing, how you're operating.
Okay, so your days basically are split into two, EVA days and normal days. EVA days are basically the days that you do your extravehicular activity. What's an extravehicular activity? Is an activity done by an astronaut outside their spacecraft, or in our case, our habitat. So you need to suit up, you need to have your objectives planned, you need to take all the equipment required and do the work on the volcano. Astronauts don't just go outside their spacecraft to, you know, go around and see whatever. No, they have work to do. So this is what we're simulating as well, their life and their schedule. So we're waking up in the morning, you need to do your med check your heart rate, your weight, you're monitoring also your weight because diet is changed. You eat freeze-dried food, so nothing fresh. We managed to grow some lettuce, and we also, like, one of the researches of my 2 missions was how to grow 4 different species of plants using limited amount of water. Because when you go on another planetary object, you won't have unlimited access to water. So we simulate that. We start with a specific amount of water, and we need to survive for, like, my second mission was 28 days. It was 5 days of training, learning many protocols, many emergency protocols as well, because if you have an emergency, you need to follow some specific steps. And then 28 days of isolation. So once you get in the habitat, you are living on Mars. So the communication is 20 minutes late with Earth. You have the same diet as astronauts. You have the same schedule. So it's basically different kinds of research projects all day, And each one of us has a specific position. So my position was a data officer and a biolab officer for my first one. My second one was a mission specialist of the mission. So it depends also on the positions of what you're going to do during the day. But it's from the moment you wake up till the moment you're going to eat dinner, you have work, 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 just astronauts.
Right, okay, and if we take this 28-day period where you're simulating life on Mars, what, you know, any challenges, you know, what were the dilemmas? Because, you know, I mean, did you run out of anything? What emergencies actually happened in that 28-day period?
Okay, so there's always a HABCOM leader when you're doing an EVA. A HABCOM leader is the person that coordinates the whole EVA from the habitats. So if the HABCOM leader doesn't give an instruction to the astronauts, they can't do anything. Like, I need to give you instructions if you're on the field and I'm the HABCOM leader to do whatever, like even pick up something. So there was one that I was the HABCOM leader of SSVA, and we're communicating through Bluetooth, so through Bluetooth. We have no access to social media, and by the way, no internet, no Google, no nothing. So there was one girl that was stuck in a hole on the volcano because the terrain of the volcano is very tricky, and it's two types basically of that terrain of dry lava, Oi and Aa. One is steady and you can step on it freely. The other, when you step on it, it just, you know, it's very brittle. So she was stuck in that hole and I needed to simulate the whole thing. It was an actual emergency, like she could have been hurt. So I just, you know, I stayed calm and I followed the protocols. I sent out astronauts to get her out of the hole using other equipment than what they had on the field. They managed to get her out of the hole and she couldn't feel her toes. So I was like, okay, you can't step on it, because if you step on something that you don't know, maybe it was just a circulation problem. Maybe it was something more like serious. So I couldn't let her step on it. And I dressed up everyone. So everybody needed their oxygen supplies and all that to get outside the habitat. They brought a stretcher and they put her on the stretcher and carried her all the way up to the habitat on the volcano. And then we assess the situation accordingly in the habitat. But if you're the HABCOM leader and you panic or you don't know how to react in these situations, then somebody may get hurt, like seriously hurt.
Right, I see. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and it's great. Now I think gives us a really good insight into, you know, the purpose of simulation and going to somewhere like the volcano and how the whole team is going to operate. And what, moving away from the simulation just for a moment, going back to, I mean, what actually made you want to get involved with this? Because obviously if you decide you're going to enter this and you want to become an analog astronaut, this is a pretty long program, I should imagine. So where did that desire come from? Considering that you grew up in Cyprus, I mean, you know, is it sitting there on Cyprus looking at the stars at night and thinking, I want to get up there? Or where was the first impulse?
Actually, you're spot on.
Right.
It's my childhood dream to become an astronaut. And there's no Cypriot astronaut, basically, because we're not a member state of ESA yet. We are a cooperating member state, and our contract with ESA expires in 2022. So hopefully we'll get upgraded to an associate member state, and people from Cyprus are going to be able to apply as astronauts. Since there's no Cypriot astronaut, I couldn't just, you know, Google their name and follow the same path. So I needed to discover mine. And up until now, it's a pretty exciting journey because I keep on asking and exploring and finding new stuff to do, you know, towards that goal. And for me, the analog astronaut missions were a very important step in this huge stair to becoming an astronaut, because it kind of gives you a taste of the reality that you desire. So it's like a window to a whole new world, and that's what fascinates me.
Okay, and if we, this window to a whole new world, ultimately, let's say a mission to Mars becomes possible. What's the, it may sound strange, but what's the point? I mean, what's the hope of what you, as you said, astronauts are going to have jobs to do, you're going to have to research, you're going to have to do things. So let's say a potential mission to Mars, what would be some of the core research topics that would be focused on then, on the planet?
Okay, I love this question. So the whole simulation thing and the whole analog astronaut mindset is because we're trying to find solutions on how to survive without depending without depending on Earth. So these solutions are also going to help Earth because we're living with limited water. Our resources here are becoming finite, by the way. We won't have water until, infinity. So trying to survive with limited water and finding solutions on that also gives solutions to some problems on Earth. The same thing with growing plants. If, let's say, we manage to go there and, we do the mission like you said, well, there's humans are going to need to figure out a lot of going to be ones handling terrain there. So the behavioral aspects, like the research that's been going to be conducted, there's also
Eleni, sorry, can you just go back? We just lost you, actually. Our terrestrial connection just broke. But no, we still had your picture, just the voice broke up. So just that last bit, if you could just finish that for us, the last bit. We got the bit about, how it's going to help us here on Earth struggle with some of the things that we're going to face.
Okay.
Yeah.
So addressing the question, if actually people manage to go there and start, living there, they're going to address, they're going to be the first ones handling the terrain there, the actual Martian terrain. They're going to be the first ones that are going to actually try and survive by living with each other.
Okay, right.
So behavior is going to be different from that on Earth. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's like so many researchers.
Yeah, I get that, and it's nice to make them so relevant for us here on Earth, and also not just scientific things that might help us, but also behavioral things that might help us. We're coming to the end of this, but it's a really interesting conversation. I mean, this whole concept of the analog astronaut, your journey, your story. One thing I would like to just ask you is that, I once, you said you do these 28-day-long simulations. And I once, in the past, I did some work with people who come out of prison. And I know it's not a prison for you, but it must be interesting that you go off for 28 days, you're totally isolated in another environment. What is that first impression like for you, stepping back into our everyday world? Because people who've been in prison, they have very interesting perceptions of suddenly what life is like. The speed, for example, of how quick life is. But, you said no social media, no Google, none of this. So what's it like when you step back out of one of those 28-day simulations?
Okay, I love your question, and it's actually the first time that somebody asked me that. The feeling is, because for me specifically, I feel like I self-improve throughout the mission. Like, I'm getting out of the mission as a different person because your whole perspective changes. Like, especially with very simple stuff that people couldn't even realize that would be a problem, like the diet. You only eat dry stuff. So when you step out of the habitat, you're looking for fresh fruits or fresh vegetables. They feel like chocolate in your mouth. Or like social media, it's a whole new world living with no social media and no interaction. Because you focus on stuff, you go deeper into stuff. You get the opportunity to see how the world would be like with no social media, and that's so exciting. You have so much time. We read books before I sleep, which, yes, you read books in your real life. Like, I always read books because I'm a book lover. Oh, sorry. Because I'm a book lover. But, like, there were people in my missions that didn't usually read books in their everyday life. Yeah. So, like, it's a good,
no, it's a really interesting insight there, and it's a little bit concerning about how deep you felt life was without some of these elements, and then how quick and shallow it is once you step back into it. But a very, very nice insight. We have to leave it there, though. Some really interesting insights into your life, your perceptions, and also taking us and getting us to imagine these potential journeys. So thanks for that. It's been really interesting. Thanks once again to our guest, Eleni Charitonos. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll be back we'll take a short break now, and then we'll be back to look at this whole concept of space travel. That will be great. Yeah. But we will be back shortly. So